And here we go. This is Nothing Explained. I'm your host, Samson, and today I have a very special treat for you. My very good friend, Dave Sheingold, is sitting across from me here, and he is going to play some live music for us. So, assuming three tracks, is that good for you, right? As we talked about earlier? Awesome. All right, so take it away, buddy. Let's do this.
I took a drive, Highway 80. How we took our time as we crossed the great You were there by my side, hungry and wild. What a hopeless child. Was I? You help me find home again. On my own again. Ooh, in a shelter. With an outstretched hand, and it was you. You couldn't just walk on by as I stumble, make my way through the light, wandering deaf, dumb, and blind.
Nice work. What's that called?
I don't know if it totally has an official name yet. I was calling it Portland Song, and it's about my dog who just passed 2 weeks ago, and about this trip we took out to Portland and the time we spent there. Yeah.
Right on.
So a lot of times I don't name songs until the actual album comes off, and I'll be like, it's song 3, or it's like sad song, breakup song. Yeah.
Let's do another.
Bailey, I believe you are my best friend. Even though one day time might end, and I know, oh, ease my worried mind. And I know all things they must go, though I'm sure that you'll bring white as snow wherever you roam. And why did I ever try to love you? 'Cause when I smile and you smile, I know that, baby, I don't need this worried mind clouding up my sweet sunshine. And I know ease my worry mind. I see a light come shining from the west into the east. Any day now, anyway now, I shall be relieved.
Yay. I love that song.
Also about my dog. And then, are we able to do covers on here? Is that
Oh, yeah,
okay?
totally.
Okay, cool.
We're not, depending on the algorithm, YouTube will make a claim on it, but we haven't really monetized anything like for our own personal gain, so far YouTube hasn't complained about anything, so.
Cool. I think I'm going to do a song that Jeff Buckley did, and I don't know who originally wrote it, so unfortunately I can't give them due credit. But it's called Calling You. Oh, maybe I'm not doing that. Never mind. I'm going to do one called Twin Flame. think it works that way. You're causing so much pain and separation. Twin flame. I'm tired of these games. Your echo radiates. You got no one to shake anymore. And you know there's no one to show you the way. Oh, twin flame. Oh, twin flame. 'Cause you're burning your love away.
Yeah, nice.
Oh,
Cool. So ditch the guitar there and have a seat. And while he does that, typical introductions. This is Nothing Explained. This is my podcast on the WeAreDenver Podcast Network, recording live here in Ghost House Studios. If you like that performance and how it sounds, Rich is, of course, available for doing the same for you. So as usual, this is Nothing Explained, where I explain absolutely nothing, and as a consequence of that, yeah, you can drag those headphones back over here. There's another pair here too. As a consequence of that, everything I say or anyone says on this here podcast program is of no real consequence. We're just sharing opinions and remarking on the state of things, all of which is highly suspect, including those opinions and statements. I don't give legal advice, financial advice, or medical advice, because advice is a legal term and you can be held liable for taking someone's advice to heart. So I make suggestions, but what you do is up to you. Right, Dave?
I guess. I don't know.
You're not sure? You're not sure?
Just, of course it is.
So I brought you on the program today. Are we? I'm going to assume, Miles, if you need something to correct a video or whatever, holler at us. But so you're moving pretty soon, which I was kind of like, you put that out. You're going to Austin, yeah?
Yeah.
So is that part of the music thing? I know Austin's a real big music city.
Yep. I going down there and just looking to collaborate more with people and get a change of scene. I've been in Boulder for 13 years now. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What is your relationship with Boulder? Do you feel like you've worn out your welcome? Is there something like kind of like here that, you know, like, and there's obviously potential for good, or there's something you're getting away from, you know, who knows? But is there something you're not feeling about Boulder?
Well, you know, the first time I tried to leave Boulder, I moved to Portland last year for a little while. And when I made that move, I had this feeling that I was like, I didn't want to leave Boulder. Like once I was actually on the road, and it seemed like this really big like thing, this huge decision I was making, and it seemed very dramatic. And this time, it just feels like, you know, the end of a chapter. It's like I'm just about to read the last page, and it's just, you know, normally when you try to leave a place, it's like it tries to grab onto you and everything, and now it's not, and this just feels like the next thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have something pulling you towards Austin?
Music, yeah, and I have a few friends down there, but I went down for play an unofficial showcase at South by Southwest this last year, and I just really loved it. And whenever I go there, there's just like a magic in the air, and
Nice.
so many people play music. Everyone's got a little like practice space or studio in their garage, and yeah.
Nice. Looking forward to some collaboration. So you've got a place all figured out, it looks like?
Yeah. Yep, down on the riverfront, I guess. I'm not totally sure exactly where it is. My friends went and picked it out for me.
Oh, nice. You had people scouting?
Yeah.
That's a good hookup.
So I haven't seen the view or anything, but I trust them.
Excellent. And you doing a little What are you doing for rent funds and stuff? Do you have like day job stuff or?
I'm going to be getting a day job.
Nice.
So I guess, or, at least hopefully just a temporary day job. I'd like to get a band together down there and then just start touring as many days a year as possible.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do you see yourself in a band? Like, do you have an ideal thought there?
Well, there's like different types of things I like to do. So there's my own singer-songwriter type stuff. And usually I have like string players backing me up. But I'd also like to get involved just as a vocalist with a lot of bands. Like I do funk, I can do jazz and all these other things. So I'm just looking to like expand as much as I can and play in as many projects as I can.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, you have an excellent vocal range. I'm excited to see what happens. You have a great voice. That's why I brought you on. So today I wanted to randomly, I was thinking about lying this week, and I wrote a thing. I just kind of have a candid conversation, but this week I wrote something, and so it's probably only about 85%, but I'm going to read it. And then we can kind of just see where the conversation goes from there, if that's all right with you, Dave. So this is called Know Thyself. I don't know what people think about me. I could guess. I certainly have hopes about the impressions that I give them, but I don't really know. I could make some pretty good guesses about what my friends think of me, but I don't actually know what everyday people really think about me. The interesting thing about this is that even if all of those people started taking time out of their day to tell me, I couldn't be sure if they were telling me the truth. Dropping the lie word here seems a little bit ominous, but I feel like that's actually the truth. People aren't really lying on purpose, but sometimes it's the nice thing to do. No, I don't think you're overweight. Yes, I think you have a chance of getting that job that you're not even remotely qualified for. Oh my God, this is delicious. Yum. In our attempts to encourage rather than discourage, we let the lie sneak into our lives. I've lied. I didn't like it. I tried to avoid it at all cost, but that's pretty hard. I avoided being a manager for a long time because I knew that they were going to make me lie. Yeah, business is great. I'm definitely not going to fire you tomorrow. The kitchen will not be on fire for very much longer. If I really told you the place was about to close, maybe not you, but someone would not show up for work. I've heard stories of people pulling a TV right off the wall and walking out in that moment. Maybe you wouldn't, but that's the fear that leads to the lie. You are afraid that they will react to the truth, that they will take advantage of it, or that you will lose your advantage. In business, you never tell the truth because you don't want the stock to drop before you have a chance to sell. In romance, you avoid the truth because of the fear of being alone. Most of the time, you stick with the lie and just assume that you're better off. And maybe you are. I don't really know. Just like I don't really know what people really think about me. In the movie The Labyrinth, Sarah comes across a pair of doors, one which leads to the castle and the other leading back to the beginning of the labyrinth. Residing upon the doors are a pair of anthropomorphic brass door knockers. The knockers state that one of them is the correct door, while the other is the wrong. They then state that she can ask them which door is correct, but one of the knockers is always lying, and the other is always telling the truth. This bit of courtesy in lying is how the lie gets a foothold in our lives. This is the white lie. This is what opens the door to these situations where you are lying on a regular and systematic basis. Sometimes it's okay to lie. You suddenly have a lot more things to keep track of. Without the lie, you only had to know what is. With the lie, you have to know what is, what isn't, and which people know which part. The easiest example of this is kids. It seems like everyone knows you're supposed to lie to kids. Storks bring babies, and Santa Claus is real. I don't know for sure if this kind of lying is really bad. I do know that lying can be tough to juggle. Sometimes you get tired and sloppy, and sometimes you don't want to lie, but you're caught off guard and you panic, and you're too afraid to immediately fix it after you realize you were wrong. I'm dating a sweet girl, Grandma. Yes, of course she's coming to Thanksgiving. The check is in the mail. I don't know why you're freaking out about this. I told you, we're just friends. These are our favorite lies because they set the stage for our favorite fictions. The frat house that just needs to throw one more party so they don't get kicked out. The couple who isn't a couple but pretends to be a couple but ends up being a couple anyway. Throwing down the gauntlet to the to the jock / bully, even though he's totally going to beat you down the mountain and then straight beat you down. Even if we didn't have these lies in our lives, we wouldn't have drama, and we wouldn't have theater, movies, TV, and the vast majority of the modern creative art. And this is the issue, isn't it? The lie is life. The lie gets us into the situation. It creates the problem we must solve. It's the seed for our growth, and mostly it's what makes things interesting. I bet you can't even imagine your life without any lies, and thus you are stuck with them. So here we are, us and the lies, partners in crime. We have accepted them into our lives, so now what? I mean, we can't lie all the time, so when is it okay to lie, and when is it not okay? How big of a lie is too big of a lie? Honestly, I don't know, just like I don't really know what people think about me. But I want to draw your attention to the line inside yourself. How big of a lie is too big of a lie for you? Knowing that lying is part of your life, you should have strict rules about what kind of lying you are going to allow in your life. Lack of due diligence with regard to one's relationship to lies is what allows us a white lie to turn from white to gray to black. This internal debate is no easy task, especially against the commercial backdrop of our everyday life. There is no more accepting venue for the value of a lie than the world of money. Shoes make you a better ball player. Alcohol makes you more attractive. Drugs are bad unless they are patentable, and the thing makes the man. So every day we lie about every little thing to be nice, to make ourselves look nicer, to help someone feel better, to save a little time because the truth takes forever. With all these lies floating around, it's easy to forget which one was a lie and why we started lying in the first place, but there are some lines you shouldn't cross. The reason you should always keep your lying in check is because there is one person you should never lie to you, and that's yourself. Lying to oneself is where the real problems start, because once you start lying to yourself, you stop noticing when you are lying to others. I started this piece this week because I started watching the HBO show Girls, written by and starring Lena Dunham. It's incredibly well written, so props to Lena. But it's a little difficult to stomach sometimes because it's basically a group of girls who can't stop lying. Shoshana prefers having bad friends than no friends. Marnie thinks poorly of herself despite being very capable and beautiful. Jessa is a classic addict, and Hannah's character is the most interesting given that her talent with words is sprayed from the fire hose of her mouth, unfiltering truth about everyone all the time unless she's talking about herself. The entire show is built on lies. So back to the labyrinth. Sarah has some time to formulate the question for the two brass knockers and manages to solve the riddle by asking both the doors the same question. If I were to ask the other door if this is the correct door, what would he say? If you are pointing to the correct door, the liar would tell you the truth teller would... This is as difficult as it gets. If you are pointing to the correct door, the liar would tell you that the truth teller would tell you it's the wrong door. The truth teller would correctly inform you that the liar would be lying when they tell you it's the wrong door. If you are pointing at the wrong door, the liar would lie and tell you that the truth teller would inform you it's the correct door, and the truth teller would correctly state that the liar would lie to you by telling you it's the correct door. In this way, the correct door will always be reported as the incorrect one. Simple, isn't it? I found an article online by Mark Manson titled 9 Subtle Ways We Lie to Ourselves. I think a couple of his lies are repetitive, so I've condensed it slightly and will share with the big one that I think he missed. Or I'll finish with the big one. Number 1, I would do that, but I can't because I don't have this one thing. Number 2, people wouldn't like me if they knew I was different. I am different. Everything is great / everything sucks. Number 4, I know what I'm doing. And number 5, the one I think he was missing, I never lie. When you lie to yourself, some part of you knows you are lying. There's a part of you that knows. I can't prove this to you, but I believe it's true. And when you lie to yourself, you have separated yourself into parts, where one part that knows that you are lying and the other part that knows that you aren't. This is exactly the same as when you lie to your peers and you separate them into the part that knows you are lying and the part that knows that you aren't. And in this case, you can never directly ask either what the truth is. You are now forced to ask both parts. If I asked the other part what is true, what would they say? Then you have to assume that the reported lie is the truth. And there you go.
All right.
I'm not sure about the ending on that, but I don't know. I felt like I wanted to get into lying, and mostly like advertising lying is one of the big shows I want to do.
Okay.
But I had this really interesting thought watching the show that's like based on lies, right? And so like, it's so interesting we have these characters in our lives, like TV shows and stuff, that are like all really bad people. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like awful people. I can't even watch that show. They're such bad people. Trying to think of another one. You got anything? What's a bad people TV show?
Bad people TV show.
You watch much TV?
I watch movies.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's got to be a Bad People movie.
Bad People movie.
Usual Suspects. That's about bad people, though. There's some truth to it because you know the whole time you're watching bad people.
Yeah. You watch any, I don't know, it's like a lot of movies, they're like people who do like what we would call bad things, but in the context of the movie, it's, and the perspective that the director's trying to portray, they're not necessarily bad. Like you have like Kill Bill or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all these assassins, and they all, they all go around killing people, and but they have like sort of a code of ethics. So then like your line of what's good and bad, when you're like the observer, that falls on like their kind of code. So not actually like, so like them killing something might not seem like a bad thing. And then they give like the background of how all these people came to be, and it's actually like their position where they are in life actually ends up being like an understandable result of the beginning, and maybe even a step forward.
Yeah. I think in Kill Bill you could think of I'm forgetting her name in the yellow jumpsuit. Uma Thurman's character, yeah. You can think of her as the original lie,
Yeah.
She's the lie that gets told, and then the lie all comes back to haunt them over the next two movies. That point when that sinking feeling when it all just comes out and you're there staring the lie in the face. What about lying? What do you think about lying to people as kids and stuff? Like, did you grow up with Santa Claus?
Nope, I was Jewish raised.
All right. What was the Santa Claus dialogue? Did they say it? Were they honest with it? Just don't, but make sure you lie to your friends.
I don't think they ever really came up between us. Like, I think I just always kind of knew Santa Claus
doesn't do Jews.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know, I was like Jewish, but we didn't really have like so much like religious following at all in our house. We were just like, that's the family tradition. But I don't know, I kind of, and people might say it. It was like, to me, it was always like people are talking about some fictional spaghetti god in the sky, and I don't think I ever had like a run-in with anyone though where I was like, Santa's not real or something.
Yeah, Santa got spoiled to me by a guy who was fixing the hot tub when we had the whole like a little family get together up the ski hill. And I was standing in the room alone with the hot tub guy, and he's like, oh, I got some presents for my kids. Well, I guess they're from Santa. And then he looked at me like, oh crap, did I just spoil that for you? But I was old enough at the time to be like, I'd had my suspicions, and I was like, oh, confirmed.
Yeah, came out when it was supposed to.
Yeah, then I had to run home and tell my friends, you guys, Santa Claus isn't real. I don't remember when I had that conversation with my parents, though.
I think as long as people find out that the gifts are still coming, they don't care.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything. Gravy train. What about, like, the birds and the bees? Like, how long do you, how old enough do you think you are to be, like, having honest conversations about how all that works?
I don't know, I think it probably depends on each individual child or person. I mean, I don't really know because, like, I don't have, like, kids, so I think that's more like something that would, like, intuitively come up, but I don't think I would, like, ever create a lie in the first place, because then you create this notion that there's something that you had to hide or that it was bad or dirty, and then when the kid finally finds out, it's like this new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I would just wait for the, kids like are kind of, inquisitive, and eventually they're going to ask, like where people come from. And I guess you just be honest, like don't, because the second you like create this fiction, you're like saying that there was something like inherent to humanity that had to be hidden, which then you like create this sort of like Catholic notion of like original sin or guilt, or that there's something inherently wrong with us. No.
When did you learn birds and bees from school or from parents?
I think I had it figured out way before my parents or school brought it up. So, yeah, just, I think probably just from friends. Yeah. Sleepovers, talking up, like 2 a.m.
Yeah, I wonder where they were getting their information.
Yeah.
I didn't. I remember sex ed, 4th grade. I don't remember how I felt about like what I knew beforehand, and I don't remember any of that. But I remember like not really having a conversation with my parents.
Yeah.
Until like high school, and I was with my first like real girlfriend, and I think they started to suspect that we'd finally started sleeping together, and I got questioned in interesting ways. I remember my dad was very dad like, so are you guys like doing it? and it was like, yeah, and he's like, you're using condoms, right? Because you don't want to. The last thing you want is to knock a girl up. I'm like, yeah, definitely. And he's like, okay, good. And that was like the end of it. And then my mom's was interesting too, because I was at the time, I'd had some sort of, I don't remember if it was like a straight back injury, but my back was hurting. And so she was like rubbing my back, like working a knot out of my back. And she had me pinned to the ground, and she decides to be like, so you and so are getting pretty friendly? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, are you guys like doing it? I'm like, yeah, pinned to the ground, though not awkward at all. But again, it was like very curt, like, okay, well, be safe. So, but I was 19. That was right after graduation. So I waited a long time to worry about any of that stuff. So I didn't have to worry about it. But it is interesting, like how it was kind of an off topic, or, it was not taboo. It was just, or maybe it was, and it was so off, like we just didn't talk about it. Such an interesting thing to like lies by omission, like that's probably what's missing from my piece is the lies by omission, because that's the big one. Turning on the TV, and it's not what they tell you, it's what they don't tell you.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about your poem, and I think people in general are simply lying to the degree that you might say that they know themselves. Because like a lie in a way is like, like if you were to distinguish between like lying and misspeaking, like one has a connotation of being like a harmful act in some way. And I think like if you're consciously and you're aware that you're telling someone a mistruth, or yourself like kind of a mistruth, there's not really any lie there because there's no deception. So if you're telling someone something because you can, maybe they have a lie going on in their head, which requires you to lie to them in a way, otherwise it can be dangerous to yourself or to them. You're more appeasing whatever they have going on mentally than actually lying. That's kind of how I see it.
You think if someone was crazy,
yeah,
you think it's safer to tell them they're sane?
I don't know if you necessarily have to tell them that they're sane, but like, I think if you kind of accept where they're at and don't, like who are we to make the judgment of like what you're experiencing? There's no validity or truth to it. For all we know, there's something, they've tapped into some sort of perception that we don't understand, and they're having trouble processing that and integrating that with their life. But, like I've seen people, I don't know how I feel about it, who are, kind of crazy and having like really like intense delusions, and someone will kind of like maybe play along with the delusion for a second, and just the fact that the person was able to connect with them and give them like a grounding point, you see that they suddenly have this sense of like relaxation, and the craziness kind of goes away for a second.
Yeah, my thought there was that you run the risk of kind of like lying to yourself when you're dealing with this person who you think is crazy. They might not actually be crazy. You could be the crazy one, and you're lying to yourself about who's crazy. And so you feel this obligation to be like, oh, this person's crazy. I need to like correct them. Yeah. And all of this, like your attempts to correct their viewpoint is like maybe you lying to yourself. You could be doing more damage because you don't really know. You're convinced, I know what's right. I know what's better, But really, if you're honest with yourself, most of the time you're going to find that you don't really know at all anything.
Yeah, and it's like, a lot of people when they encounter somebody who's crazy, they're trying to, like maybe they'll assert their sanity because what they see in that person they know is a possibility for them. Like that could happen. So they're trying to assert their like ego, their stability, and being like, that's not me, I'm sane. And they're coming to terms with it. But, like we said before, like the degree to which you know yourself is to the degree at which you lie. And it's simply saying that, if you take it from like an Eastern perspective, you could call it self, no self. There's nothing there to defend. It's because, if you get into metaphysics or anything, you know that every single thing is connected in one. And you might say it's ourself, but like your idea of yourself like expands way beyond just you. And so there's no defining point of where that could be. So we have this idea that there's this little thing inside of us that we're trying to protect. Yet we're really actually causing ourselves like a lot of stress and damage in a way by, putting up these walls. And
Yeah, from the spiritual perspective, which I adhere to for a large part, like that really is the original lie, that I am separate from you, like we are separate. So every time we see someone as separate, we are lying to ourselves in some sense of the word.
Yeah, and so like immediately, like when you encounter somebody who's going through a lot of suffering or pain, a lot of people will try to block that out, and that's where you create the lie. It's like, I am separate, because you'll feel safe all of a sudden by saying, I am separate from that person.
Yeah, because if you connect too much, you might experience their grief or anything along those lines.
And you actually will to a certain degree. Like they've shown now that like anxiety is literally contagious.
Well, hey, a smile's contagious, Like I fully think that.
Right.
And they, like these are all kind of esoteric notions that are being backed up by science. The heart field is something like 6 or 9 meters, like the.
Is that like an energy field?
Yeah, you have an electronic magnetic field that and it surrounds your whole body, but originates in the heart.
Okay.
I've actually some guy I was randomly listening to some crazy science stuff on YouTube. It was like a call-in show, and one guy called in and said that he'd hacked into a router, and he just like basically turned up all the clocks and stuff, and he found the frequency that people were running around, like they're broadcasting on, the frequency that heart magnetic field is collapsing and whatever, and he could pick up people's fields on his Wi-Fi router, and he was detecting people as far as like 1,000 feet away, which, who knows if that was true, but that is a detectable thing. So yeah, you walk into a room and you're broadcasting, if you're paying attention, that's what empathic people are doing, is they're feeling the people who walk into the room.
Yeah. And then, if you have, once again, like, if you have a good grasp on reality or lack thereof or whatever, you know that is going to pass, and then you don't necessarily personally identify it. It's like when you personally identify with whatever's going on in another human being, that's when you can get sucked into their lie, in a way. Like I've lived with somebody who's like very not honest with themselves, and they have a very grandiose notion of it. And then if you stay with them long enough, like when you're an outsider, you can just see that going on. But when you live with them, sometimes you can like fall into the notions of what they're saying. Like you'll start to believe it as much as they are.
Did you ever get to a point where you had to call that out? Or did you?
Yeah, it did. And it, of course, ended in a huge like blow up.
Yeah.
Screaming at each other, all this stuff, because like you finally, when you call somebody out on that, they're forced to confront reality, and whatever they created the lie to hide is suddenly present. And you can like see that in that person. There's just a hurt, and there's a pain, and then it's just, their lie isn't even like necessarily intentionally malicious. It's malicious to themselves, because they're like, when you don't allow yourself to feel the hurt, you're not really being embodied. And yeah, I think that's why people lie, because they don't want to face reality. Like especially with like death, people come up with all these notions, and will end up with whole religions and things out of just out of a fear of death.
Yeah. Speaking of, I did want to ask you, and obviously, feel free not to answer the following question, because it's our hard times, but in regards to the recent passing of what was the name of your dog?
Bailey,
yeah. And we met, and I had a very interesting experience with your dog, which I'm very glad to have had. So, but in Bailey's recent passing, and, like approaching that point, you knew you're coming up on the end. Or how often would you say, or like, what was your relationship with impending death? Did you ever have to kind of like lie to yourself that it was going to not happen? Like, did you have any rough edges around? It's hard to ask the question, but I'm sure you know what I mean.
I think throughout my whole life, or throughout her whole life in a way, I created a lie that it was never going to happen, or that maybe we'd go together or something along those, some romantic notion. And but no, I wouldn't say that I had like created a lie that it wasn't going to happen. I had created a lie to myself as to what the nature of death was. And, there's we have all these existential worries connected to it. And, a lot of us look at it as like a bad thing maybe. But it was basically because it was a very long process. She had a brain tumor for like a year and a half. And I dropped everything just to take care of her. And gradually as it got closer and closer to the end, I started experiencing all this intense anguish within myself. Like, I started experiencing things like anger, which for me, I've never really had much of an anger issue or never really experienced it that much in my life. And then I realized that the anger was a result of me not allowing myself to feel sad. So that was the real reality, was that I was really sad. And, the anger was an inability to come to terms with that, into that reality. So, and you distract yourselves like, I'm going to go out and do this fun thing, or you'll say, I don't need to do this fun thing because I'm strong enough to just be here. And, but by the end, everything's revealed, and everything happened in such like a magical, kind of synchronistic way. And it was really actually beautiful. And the process that's come from this has, you let go when you love someone that much and then they die, and you then let go of all your worries about death, and you see that they're all just projections, and that we really don't have much of an idea. I've had some insight because I've almost died a few times and had a certain state of mind comes over you, or peace, calm, and it's never been bad. So, yeah.
I think that's probably one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves in this society, is that we know what death is, that we have, which gives us permission to be afraid of it. I think a lot of society is built on fear. A lot of our actions revolve around the idea of afraid of growing old, and afraid of looking old, and afraid of acting old, and all of these things. And they're all kind of rooted in this being afraid of death. And then the fear of death can only come from a knowledge of it, but if we were honest with ourselves, we'd realize that is really a very ignorant position, that none of us have any real idea. Not really. You can do a lot of looking into it, and you're basically left with speculation and anecdotes. But you find that the fear doesn't really serve you, and yet it pervades.
Yeah, and it's the ultimate threat to your ego, kind of, in a way. So that's why we freak out about it, because it's like this notion of permanence is what I think lies in a lot, especially as Westerners. We have this idea of death being this sort of permanence, this state, which something can't really be permanent unless there's someone to perceive it and have that concept of permanence in the first place. So it's that notion in itself, like at least conceptually or philosophically, is wrong.
Yeah.
So it's I guess it's funny. We typically draw lines between people who have like a belief in an afterlife and no belief, and it typically falls the line between like sort of dogmatic atheism and theology, but there's like this sort of middle ground. And everyone, like our religion in the West to a large degree is physical science, not the whole spectrum. And they're like, consciousness is dependent upon this, and this. And if those go away, you cease to exist. But who's perceiving that in the first place is what they can't measure.
Yeah, exactly. And how interesting that if it is this mechanical meat suit, one-shot deal, then you've spent this entire life thinking that you are and I am, and then when you die, you find out you've been lying the whole time. Yeah,
and then, also just thinking of what type of things can arise from having that lie or like belief to yourself. Not saying I know if it is, goes on beyond, or if death is just like permanent or whatever, but like just having, like Chogyam Trungpa used to talk about the one life mentality. And when you think you have one life, you end up doing all these things that are not in accord with the rest of nature. You're like, I'm going to live every day. I'm going to go out, spend a shit ton and buy a bunch of material shit, and then just destroy the earth because it doesn't matter, because I might as well get my kicks in.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor for kind of like what I was, or the grand scheme of what I was kind of trying to capture with that piece was this idea of that first little lie that kind of sneaks in and allows you to tell bigger and bigger lies. And so, not to say obviously we don't know that there isn't something after death, but our assumptions that there is nothing is a lie because we don't actually know. And so that little lie allows us to behave improperly. Like, it doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want. It doesn't matter what I'm leaving behind for my friends and family and for my other selves.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
So I guess the key is just to when you come to honesty with just, I don't know, then suddenly all these other actions and other little lies just stop because that's like your reality of I don't know.
Yeah. I think that really is a big one. That's probably one of the ones we struggle with the most, just, because no one wants to admit themselves feeble. No one wants to admit that they're admitting yourself as wrong is one thing, but admitting that you don't know, and being brave enough to ask questions and stuff, I find is probably what we struggle with the most because, in the job situation, you don't want to be passed over for, your job promotion or whatever. So you would be willing to lie. Oh, I know how to do that, and figure it out. And a lot of times that whole system is built on the fake it or make it model,
Yeah.
And there is something to be said. There's a spiritual principle in the fake it or make it. But you certainly should never lie to yourself. If you're saying that this is something I can do, then you should believe that you can, and you probably can. That's like human potential. And when it comes to something like a job, like, I don't know PowerPoint, but I can learn it over the weekend kind of thing. Like, that's something you can do, but you do have to, you don't want to go tell your boss that you know how to do PowerPoint and then tell yourself that you know how to do PowerPoint when you don't, and then not go home and study.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like the lies you tell yourself that then get you into trouble.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mind went to Risky Business with Michael J. Fox, where he lied and said that he wasn't the mail boy. I don't know if you've ever, it's an old movie, but I was just thinking about, lies and entertainment and stuff, and that popped into my head. But he comes into, like, I think it's his uncle's company or something, but he gets a job as the mail room boy, and then because he's the mail cart guy, he has...
Is that Risky Business? Or I thought that was Tom Cruise movie.
Oh, yeah, Risky Business is where he slides into the room in his underwear or whatever, right? Yeah, and he turns his house into a brothel while his parents are gone. Yeah, everything's fine, Mom. No, I'm thinking of Opportunity Knocks, I think. Okay. But yeah, because he knows kind of the comings and goings and stuff. He knows which offices are empty and stuff, and so he sets himself up in an office and makes himself a fake identity. Yeah. And then, but of course, ends up winning in the end because he's a smart guy. So yeah, that lie worked out.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think there's something to also like diving into something that you can't do. So, for example, I went on tour with this really big musician at one point, and I think he assumed that I knew all my music theory and all these different things, but the truth is I just play by ear. So I just never said anything, and then just went through the whole, the whole tour, when someone would call out, and it's not just with this, particular person, it's just with musicians in general. If I go sit in a jam or anything, like everyone will start telling me what they're going to do. It's going to be in this key, that key. We're going to do a change here. And then, at first I used to kind of resist it, and I would be like, that's not how I play, like just do the thing. But then all of a sudden they like start getting really worried that you're not going to be able to keep up or something. And, so now I just don't even say anything. I give a nod, and that's my little lie, I guess. Yeah. People are like, you're playing in G, right? And like,
sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, I think we're I think we're a little 10 minutes short of the hour, but I think that's a great little story to end on. Actually, I have one anecdote that I remember from earlier in the show. Was I had a friend whose her name she described herself as an asshole. It was a nickname, and she introduced herself. It was on her business cards, like, "Hey, I'm Bob the asshole," and which was kind of an interesting way to interact with the world. But they were an asshole, and I was totally fine with that because at least you're being honest. And we had a big falling out in the end because I'd needed some time apart, and I'd kind of stopped. I hadn't answered some text messages and stuff, and when I finally got called out on it, I was like, well, I mean, you're an asshole, so I needed a break. And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, What do you mean? What do you mean? Your name is asshole. You call yourself an asshole every day. It's on your business cards. And the name wasn't asshole, but same thing. And they were like, yeah, but that's just a name. Like, what do you mean? And I was like, I mean, we've been friends for like a year and a half, and the whole time you've been calling yourself an asshole, and I was fine with us being friends because you are an asshole. Like, I'm only worried about truth. Like, you know, every time you act like an asshole, I'm like, well, at least they're being honest. So now here we are in this situation where you suddenly don't think you're an asshole, and that means that this whole last year and a half was a complete lie. Like, all those times that you were being an asshole, you didn't know you were being an asshole, you know? So that ended that friendship really quickly because, like I said, I'm okay with you being an asshole, but I'm not okay with you being a big fat liar. So yeah, it was a very, very interesting thing to have to interact with someone who couldn't see the truth of their truth. You know, they were out there living their truth every day. I am an asshole, but then when it came right down to it, they wouldn't admit it.
But maybe that was the lie, that they were the asshole in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, like and then they buy into, you know, like in sociology, which is what I studied at CU before I transferred, there's something called social labeling theory. And if you tell a kid that they're bad, 9.5 times out of 10, they'll end up perpetuating that. Like if you give them, like you send them to like a juvenile detention center or something like that, and you shame them and all this, then suddenly they take on that identity and spend the rest of their lives trying to get through that lie.
Well, it's certainly when you're imposing an identity upon someone, most of the time it's going to be easier for you to absorb that identity than it is to prove I'm the wrong kind of person. It's way harder to prove yourself not that identity than it is to just say, okay, I'll take it. Especially with like really staunch authority figures, in public schools and such, because they're not really paying that much attention to you. So no matter what you say isn't really going to change a lot of their perception of you. So in a lot of cases, you're just like, well, I'm going to get in trouble anyway, so I might as well just fucking do it. I don't fucking care. Word. Well, thanks, Dave. How do people find you?
You can get my album Aquarian Dream on iTunes, Bandcamp, Spotify, any online outlet, and then there's David Sheingold Music on Facebook, and then just Dave Sheingold on Instagram, or David Sheingold Music on Instagram.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Right on. And I saw you put a little post up. You were trying to get some shows in before you officially head out. Has any of that manifested?
Nope. I'll probably just go busk on Pearl Street.
Nice. That's a good plan.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and today, it's nearing the end of October. Tuesday is Halloween, so have a happy Halloween and be safe. Don't eat razor blades for candy. And big up to the Ghost House for recording. Miles is in there, keeping everything straight and narrow. And my name is Samson, and this has been Nothing Explained.